Assalamu alaikum. To start the next segment, we'll go ahead and show you a short clip of what happened at Platform 2015. This was this for the people here. Every year, the National Council of Nigerian Muslim Organization, the umbrella body of all Nigerian Muslims in the US, hosts a 5-day program. Last year, we had about 1,200 people in attendance. This year, we in Houston are going to host it. Last year was in Chicago, in December. Welcome, Enjetandi. So this year we are hosting it in Houston in December, and we're already preparing for it. So what we're about to show you, the short clip we're about to show you, is just what happened in December. I think it's about 7 minutes long. If it's longer than that, we're going to have to go.
But also, of course, living violence in Islam, but just not doubt everything that I do and trust myself and allow myself to be spontaneous in some instances. And it also taught me that just this entire experience that it also birthed my individuality, because it's just like that's something many teens are struggling with, and I believe that if one approaches certain situations with a certain confidence, even if it's false or not false, but even if you're faking it, it becomes real and it becomes who you are. If you're confident in yourself, you make decisions that are beneficial to you, and you're less likely to, I guess, want or seek things that aren't necessarily in your best interest, but you may, in your misguided views, may shoot.
That's very cool. So, do you know the next platform is going to take place?
The next platform, I believe, I've heard is going to be in Houston next year.
Okay.
So that should be it.
And what do you hope to tell folks back in Houston, Texas?
I would tell those who haven't been to platform that they should definitely come, because I honestly do believe it's a rite of passage. Every year, you're not the same person that you were last year, and if you are, then something needs to change. There's always room for improvement, and I believe platform helps you see that. It helps you see the areas where you lack or where you thought you were secure in, but you're not, and it forces you to think and try to find a solution to that. And I think that especially for teenagers.
Even though you guys care about what's our diet, it's okay. I swear to God,
Alright, thank you so much.
once again. And there's no judgment, shame in one's memory side. It's life is lost without your eyes. Come join me for the fire.
Let us give special thanks to the producer and director, Abdurrahman, not Abdurrahman. We put all that together. Round of applause for him. Alhamdulillah. So, we are going to get ahead and start. I know Captain Michael Coleman is on his way here, and that's the last person we were waiting on. I am not sure if Brother Yusuf is going to be here. But even if it doesn't come, we have Brother Mustafa Carroll here. So we're going to get ahead and start. So, November 13, 2015, we were all watching the news or reading the news. We heard about what happened in Paris, France. December 2nd, 2015, we were watching the news. We heard about what happened in San Bernardino, California. I remember vividly what my feelings were on that particular day, December 2nd, 2015. First, I watched in horror. I watched in horror. Then the next feeling was, hoping that it's not the perpetrators were not Muslims. I was hoping. Then the next thing was dejection, because we heard that the perpetrators were Muslims. After that, the next thing that happened was the feeling of devastation. Because not only were they Muslims, even a Muslim sister was said to be involved. And then I went into prayer mode. Now, why did I go into prayer mode? It's enough to have the image of a Muslim man as the terrorist. To now have the image of a Muslim sister, I was so fearful of the repercussion to our sisters. I was so concerned, I was so worried. And I was praying in my mind, and I told my wife, oh Allah, do not let them see the image of this sister, because I don't want our sisters to be in harm's way. Because as we have it, we saw the image, we also saw the images. This is something that bothers us a lot. After that event, we've had a series of events, follow-up events that happened because of that event, or people who already have things in their mind and they were waiting for something to trigger them. We heard about the threats at Miriam Masjid. A while back, we had a press conference at Miriam Masjid. I was fortunate to be there, and so were members of our cabinet. At the conference, I was also fortunate again to meet Patricia Villafranca, who is the director of community outreach for the FBI Houston office. And I also met with the director, Edward. So I met with him as well. So we said we would like to have people come to our community to come talk to us about things happening around us. And Alhamdulillah means we're thanking Allah. We have Patricia in our midst today, so I will use this opportunity to invite Ms. Patricia Villafranca to the stage. Takbir. Also at this press conference, if I remember very well, was Brother Mustafa Karo. Brother Mustafa Karo is not new to our community. Most of us know him. He's the history director of the Council of American Islamic Relations. So Brother Mustafa, please come to this. All right. So, when I sent out the invitation to Ms. Patricia, she was very gracious to us. She accepted, not only did she accept the the invitation rather, she also requested that the special agent in charge of terrorism for the Houston office come with her. And we're grateful today that we have Special Agent Andy Liu. Please come to the light. So we will reserve this seat for Captain Michael Coleman. When he comes, he will come to the stage here. Now, the next thing is, before we start this discussion, we would like to get short introductory speeches from our guests. But also, I want to introduce some special guests who are not going to be on the table, but they are very special and they have to be recognized. Firstly, we all know, for those of us that have been coming to our programs now, we all know Miss Erin Whitney. Miss Erin Whitney, please stand up for recognition. Miss Erin Whitney, for those who attended the Nurture Heart approach, she is the one that taught us that, and we're very grateful for that. Some of us have been using it in our homes, and we're seeing good results. Like I told you earlier on, that's what Islam actually preaches, to be kind to people. And we're grateful that you reminded us of that. Now, Miss Erin Whitney, he called me up one day and said she would like me to meet with her husband, John Bauman. John Bauman is, how do I describe him? My short meeting with him, I find it very intellectually stimulating. It is good. He has some ideas that he would like to preach to the world. He has ideas about how we can achieve peace in the world. We know this is not the forum for it, but we'll give him about 3 to 5 minutes to introduce himself and give us the summary of what his idea is. After this meeting, John is going to meet with Patricia and the rest, and he's going to meet specifically with our Imam to talk about his ideas. So, before I give the microphone to the others here, I'll give the microphone to John, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shakir. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to come and be at this forum, and I have to say that I think you are a man of vision and foresight. Well, good morning, all. I'm glad to have the opportunity to meet with you today, and I'm looking forward to hearing what all the other speakers and visionaries in this room will say. And also appreciate the opportunity to help move the world forward toward universal peace. When I last spoke with Shakir, he shared with me that Islam is a religion of peace. Now, I am here because, as Shakir knows, for the last 30 years I have worked toward moving the world towards sustained, lasting, universal peace. And as a mathematician, I discovered a mathematically proven universal law that if people know and understand it in the world, will make lasting peace not only possible, but inevitable. So I've also mathematically proven that if people know about this law and use it, it will greatly reduce global extremism. So this law is the underlying principle of universal peace. The universal law of efficiency all but guarantees that universal peace will result if enough people understand and use this law. I've written a book about it, and it's entitled The Unlocked Soul, and it will be published in March. The universal law of efficiency is simple enough to be understood by children, yet it is profound enough to fundamentally change our understanding of the world. Now, not knowing about a universal law can be dangerous. If a child crawls off the edge of a cliff, the law of gravity will guarantee that they will fall. The world is falling off a cliff toward more and more violence. And we need somebody to help save it. This room is filled with visionaries. You would not be here if you did not have in your heart the vision of a more peaceful world. Achieving this vision will require the sustained cooperation and effort of many people. When we work together towards something as important as universal peace, we can move mountains. If we work together to teach this newly discovered universal law of efficiency to our youth, our community leaders, governments, and you, the parents who want to protect their families, we begin the process of changing the world. Each of you is an important part of this change, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Now, my wife, you know a little bit about my wife, but she and I have started a foundation to share the knowledge of the universal law of efficiency. But we cannot do this alone. I invite each of you to come and talk with us after the forum today. It is only by working together that we can move this mountain, that we can save the world from falling off the cliff of war. Helping the world to understand the universal law of efficiency will be an important part of saving the world from global extremism. The universal law of efficiency proves that lasting peace can only be achieved through peaceful means and shared resources. If this law becomes a global meme, it will reduce terrorism and global extremism because people will finally understand why peace is in everyone's best interest. If the Muslim community embraces the universal law of efficiency, it will help show the world that Islam is truly a religion of peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. So while John was speaking, we're blessed to have the presence of Captain Michael Coleman. Captain Michael Coleman, please come to the stage. So, as you all know, Captain Michael Coleman is running for an elective office in Harris County. He's going to introduce himself fully a short while. So what we do now, we go around the stage here. We'll have a short speech before we go into questions and answers.
Good morning. I'm here to take your questions more than to talk at you. So I'll just let you know that I've been a special agent for 29 years. I'm on the very edge of my career. I'm going to be retiring at the end of April, which guarantees you honest answers from me. I'm not afraid. I can say anything that's in my heart. So that's why I'm here today, is mostly to have you talk to me. But I've worked many things. I've worked drug trafficking, I've worked terrorism, I've worked Asian gangs in Boston. But for the past 7 years, I've been the community outreach coordinator. It means that I'm never in the office. It means that I'm always out meeting with different communities. I know a lot of the members of your community already from other events, and it's been the best 7 years of my 29. And I think because it was Houston. When I was in Boston, and I fell in love with a man from Texas. And men from Texas can't move to Boston. So they just can't leave. So I came here, and I really liked Boston. I was very sad when I left. But Boston does not have what Houston has when it comes to the unbelievable numbers of international communities and the people I've gotten to meet and the food I've gotten to eat. It's been the greatest experience of my whole career, and so I'll end there, because mostly today I'm here for you to talk to me.
Thank you. My name is Michael Coleman, born and raised Houstonian. I work for Harris County Constable Precinct 5. I've been a constable for 28 years. First black captain ever in our division, first black lieutenant at the officer. My thing is this: in law enforcement, it's about fair and integrity, and it's something we see now with bad officers making everybody look bad. I think we have to bring that back and bridge the gap with the community, because in law enforcement, it's either you're right or you're wrong, but it should be. It's fair. Everybody should be treated with respect, and you don't learn respect in a academy. You don't learn respect in school. You don't respect at home. That comes from the parents where you was raised. And we're really getting away from it. And we have to go back to that as a village raising our kids. So I'm here to answer any questions about law enforcement or the way I'm running. I'm also running for Harris County Constable Precinct 7, which I'm running for that reason. We have to, our young men and women, we have to be impacted in our community.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andy Liu. Thank you. Hi, my name is Andy Liu. I want to thank Shaquille for inviting me here, and also graciously for the promotion I just received. Not to disappoint you guys, but I am a supervisor of the counterterrorism branch. I supervise over 10 agents. And I also want to get a shout out to Abdul, who helped me find a parking spot. Today, I think we're all here to kind of talk about the religion and stereotype, discrimination, and the prejudice that you guys perceive. And in talking about that is, you're looking at an Asian guy up here, and I'm holding a microphone. That doesn't mean I'm going to karaoke, but the stereotype is, and I should learn, and I should sing very well. But the fact of the matter is, and I don't. A little bit about me is, yeah, I'm just not good with microphones. So I'm going to stand up a little bit here. I immigrated to the United States in 1984 as an immigrant. But this one. No, it's fine. I just don't want to hold a microphone, and you know, having been in the FBI for 15 years now, I want to bridge that gap of discrimination and prejudice and stereotyping by telling you guys, look, to bridge that gap, we have to have that communication. We have to have that clear communication, deliberate communication, especially with the community and the community leaders. So I hope to be in this meeting today to facilitate this, and with your leaders and with the community, and hopefully fetch some good questions from you guys. Thank you very much.
Working? Good. Assalamu alaikum. All right, my name is Mustafa Kira. I'm the Executive Director of the Houston office of the Council of American Islamic Relations. Our mission is to bridge understanding between Muslims and non-Muslims. We work as an advocate for Muslims, and we also serve to protect Muslim civil rights. We actually take cases, civil rights complaints in our office. 60% of the work we do is outreach to the community, that is the broader community, and we also do inreach to our own community in terms of letting them understand their civil rights and their responsibilities as American citizens or as American residents. The one thing, I had a talk a couple of weeks ago at the Pearland Mosque, and we were talking about this whole issue of Islamophobia and how things are happening in our society, San Bernardino and Paris, etc. And I want to share this with the Muslim community, that we have to not be as Islamophobic towards each other as some of the information that we get in the news. And it taints everybody. I grew up in this country, born and raised in Gary, Indiana. And I remember as a kid, our whole community was tainted with images that other people had given us. You know, so we would hear stuff like, well, my mother would take us downtown, act your age, not your color. This type of self-effacing type of information. And I think with the amount of negativity that you hear, that you might see on TV, and the things that you hear about things happening in the world, that there's a tendency for us to think that, oh my God, we need a lot of work. Well, here's the truth. There has been, in the last year, 355 mass murders in America. That is 4 people or more. And out of the 355 mass murders last year, one, to my knowledge, in fact, you can correct me if I'm wrong, one was a Muslim couple out of 355. Maybe a week or 2 before that was a murder in Colorado, where a guy walked into a Planned Parenthood clinic and killed a bunch of folks, and it almost got squashed. But the news of the Muslim couple, and I'm one of those that if you kill one person, that's one too many. So we're not trying to excuse it, but I want us to put things in perspective. That the Muslim community in this country contributes greatly. And if all the Muslims left tomorrow, this country would be in a fix. You know, we have approximately close to 20% of our folks are medical doctors, 30% are engineers, almost 60% are formally educated. We commit less than 1% of all crime in this country. But if you listen to the news, you would think that there's a terrorist around every corner and one under every bed. And that's simply not true. Now, is there a problem in the world? Absolutely. But the problem in the world has more to do with resources and politics than it does religion. And those people and those groups who use religion are only using it to galvanize folks to their side. They want to convince you, and many of our children, in fact, that their cause is just. So they use religious language to get us to their side. And that is where is about the limit of what religion is doing in terms of the terrorism, the heinous acts that we see with Al-Qaeda, with Boko Haram, with ISIS, with Al-Shabaab, etc. That these issues are not just a religious healing. And we all know that. Muslims in this room know that Islam does not cause for terrorism. But if that's the case, then all the religions are guilty of something, because we all, just go look around. You know, and you can correct me again, Pat, but I'm going to wrap it up. And I just wanted to put that out there before we start our conversation. And I think it's really important for us to know, because we have a tendency to think that we're worse off than other folks. And I don't want us to start off the conversation with that. So inshallah, during the conversation, we can get some clarity on some issues that are going on.
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. So before we go into questions, we'd like to play 1 or 2 short clips for us. Can we get the light off, please? Over there. Yes, thank you.
I was called Donald Trump's worst nightmare. And I just feel like that's so laughable because I'm not anybody's worst nightmare. I'm 5 foot nothing and I just really love everybody. The Muslim community is really feeling the Islamophobia pretty deeply. And we are American citizens and we're as terrorized and terrified as everybody else around things like San Bernardino and Paris attacks. The idea that we have to speak out against those things, it's hard for us because we're hurting with everybody else.
I think Ask a Muslim is incredibly important just to reach everyday people in this climate where Muslims often feel targeted or intimidated by what's in the media cycle, what's on Trump's lips, and in some cases what Islamophobes are getting a stage to talk about.
We are human beings talking to people about it.
All right, thank you. So the first question actually comes in from a writing. So an American Muslim, an average American Muslim faces 4 times more threats from terrorism than the average American. First is the threat from terrorists, as they do not discriminate in causing mayhem. Second is the threat from Islamophobic people. Third is the threat from terrorist sympathizers amongst us who are like wolves in sheep's clothing. Third and fourth, rather, is the threat of profiling by law enforcement officers. I am curious to know what your analysis of the threats against the average American Muslim is, and what efforts are you making to educate and protect us?
Well, it's my job to educate the community. So for 7 years, I've been out speaking. Yes, the incidents of, I want to clarify that there's a difference between a hate crime and a hate incident. And both of them need to be dealt with. A hate crime has to be a crime. Someone burns your house or your mosque, whatever, because of your religion. That's a crime. It's the crime of arson, and the motivation of it was hate. If someone assaults you because of your religion or your color or your national origin, that's an assault. And then we have to prove that it was motivated at least partially by bias or hate, and we can put federal hate crimes charges. But there are many things that are very ugly and unfortunate that do not rise to the level of a crime. Someone could walk past you, and I know it happens, I hear about it all the time. Someone walks past a woman wearing a hijab in the parking lot at HEB and says, "Oh, I don't like Muslims," or "I wish all Muslims would go home," which makes me laugh. I think a lot of Americans don't know how many Muslims were born here and love this country. They think that you all just got here from someplace else, which is an education thing that needs to be done with the non-Muslim community. But anyway, those are hate incidents, okay? It wasn't a crime, but it was an incident of hate. And those need to be reported as well, not to us. We're not going to investigate people for using their free speech, even if their free speech is ugly. If they haven't committed a crime, I can't open a file on someone because of what they believe. Some countries, they do that. We do not do that here. But there are organizations like CARE, like the Muslim Public Affairs Council, and even the Anti-Defamation League, who have been protecting the Jewish community. They suffer a lot of hate crimes and terrorist attacks against them as well. They're a very effective organization. But you need to report those smaller incidents, and I'll tell you why. Because those organizations that are not law enforcement that collect that, If they see a new disturbing trend developing, they're going to tell us about it. And I have gotten calls from the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center saying, you know what? We've got a problem in Spring, Texas. We've had, incidents there are on the rise, abnormally so. And you know what we were finding with there was a bunch of white racist skinheads in Spring having parties, inviting mixed up young people to come. And they were poisoning some of the young people there, and we saw the hate incidents rise. So what you can do as a community is to if someone does something hurtful or hateful, report it to the police. Anyway, they may tell you, you know what, it wasn't a crime, but go ahead then and report it to CARE or to the Muslim Public Affairs Council, because you might be in possession of a piece of information that when it's combined with other people's information would let us know we have a problem in a particular neighborhood, and then we can take a look at it.
As far as dealing with an individual officer on the street that disrespects you, complain on it. Testing. As far as dealing with an individual officer on the street, complain on it. It may be minor, but where there's smoke, there's fire. If you never complain, you never know. There's no way you should be disrespected by any officer. Complain on it. Complain to a supervisor. You may think it falls on deaf ear. It doesn't. If enough complaints come in, you have to look at that officer because something's going wrong. So don't ever think you have to be disrespected. Complain on that officer, get his badge number, get his name, get the time he stopped you, or whatever he did to you, whether it's minor or not. Just complain. Enough complaints come in, we have to look at it.
Thank you. So, before we go to the next question, which is actually a video question, we'll play another video, a short clip, and go to the video question so that we can all have a good perspective of what we're talking about. This first light again. Yes, no, front light. Thank you. That's better. You can leave the others like that.
I'm going to personally have a militia that's going to come down to your Islamic society in Ralph County, firebomb you, shoot whoever's there on Spider-Man. I don't care if they're 2 years old or 100. I'm over your the whole country.
Now, while Patricia was talking, she did mention there's a difference between crime and incident.
That was a crime. That was a crime. That was a
All right, so that's a threat. Okay, good. And then we'll play the next question, which is from one of our sisters here. So let's listen.
I have 3 questions. The first one is, why can't the government ban the use of the internet to spread hateful and racist ideology in the United States? And then the second one is there any kind of hate speech on the internet that is not protected by the First Amendment? And then the third one is, has anyone ever been successfully prosecuted in the United States for sending racist threats via emails and other, social networks? Thank you.
So the question again. Why can the government ban hate speech, ban the spread of hate speech on the internet? Is that correct? That's the first question.
To follow the
fabric of this country is built on freedom of speech. And that is very, very well instilled within our Constitution. Hate speech, or whatever speech, if it doesn't directly cause harm, for example, the last video that we saw directly insinuates that I'm out to attack you. That's a crime, guys. But if someone is just out bantering on the internet, it is a freedom of speech. It is how people, any people, whether their religion, age, ethnicity, express their feelings. And sometimes they hurt your feelings and my feelings. But as long as they're in the line of a debate or conversation, there might be colorful metaphors in it, it is a freedom of speech, and it's protected by the law.
And then number two, the question number 2 was whether there is hate speech that's not protected. Absolutely. When he says, I'm going to come there and shoot you in the head, I don't care if you're 2 or 100, that's not protected. That's not protected. So, you know, you should, if you are the target of this kind of speech, report it. Somebody will tell you whether or not it rises to the level. But when they threaten to come there and shoot you, that is not protected speech. And the third question was, yes, who was the case where the guy was going to go in and shoot a mosque? Yeah.
So approximately almost 2 years ago, we had a male lived pretty close to here in Houston. He was part of this little sovereign movement, and you know, what I'm going to sovereign is that they believe that their own interpretation of the Constitution is correct, and he was, you know, in the process of talking about, you know, going down and hurt minorities and Muslims. And so we got the tip on this guy, and then ultimately we arrested the guy. So yes, we have prosecuted individual out of this AOR area of responsibility of hate crime. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and take questions from the...
It was asked, but I don't think it was answered, or maybe I didn't hear it right, but ISIS is a terrible threat everywhere in the world. Why is it that, I know there's free speech and everything, but why is it okay for them to be able to recruit online? These videos come out every day, and it keeps, you know, it's everywhere. Why can't they cut those videos off?
Yes.
Isn't there anything?
It's about censorship, okay? Very good question, by the way. It's about censorship. A lot of these videos are not posted within the United States Internet Protocol IP addresses. So it's uploaded from somewhere else in the world. Information as distasteful to you and to me, if we start censoring this information online, where does it end? The last thing you want is government censoring information in this country, so that information, whether it's good or it's bad, educates all of us. Just like your reaction to ISIS video is bad, but now you know it's there, rather than having the government censor that for you. That's the last thing.
Yeah, if we censor it from you seeing it, what if you're trying to understand, for good reasons, how they're manipulating? I just saw the greatest series, it was on the BBC, and it was called How ISIS is Recruiting British Teenagers. And if you haven't seen it, you can find, they found a young woman volunteer to pretend that she was interested in going to the Sham, and it was frightening to see the pressure and the tactics and the techniques that were being utilized against this young woman to try to get her to come over. And we need to know that as a community. We, you know, at the FBI, I want to know, how is the KKK recruiting young people? I'm going to go to their website. I want to understand what their tactics are. And so that we can put a different message out. But the FBI has met with Google. We have met with other companies and said, why, and YouTube, why is it that when a young person who's confused and mixed up types in ISIS, they get everything ISIS wants them to see first, instead of the good stuff that we want them to see. That's and it's basically, we haven't produced as a community enough good quality videos opposing ISIS to get enough hits to raise us up, you know, where we pop up first. And that's something that I've been talking to a lot of different communities about, is like having video contests with kids and letting them do don't be a hater type videos, and they have to be good. The people that make the ISIS videos are media professionals. And young people, especially angry, confused young people, they like those videos. And you know what? The rest of us haven't come up with anything yet good enough to compete with what they have.
Now, talking about trends, talking about censorship, I remember in preparing for this event, I actually went online too. And I did see something from the UK, the jihadists next door. I don't know if you watched those clips. These are people on the streets of London preaching hate. I mean, I don't understand, personally, I do not understand why governments cannot pick up those people there. It's very obvious. They're going to shouting matches to people, they're preaching hate. Are we at the threat of such things happening in the US?
Yes, this goes back to what we discussed earlier when Patricia and our care representative talked about. Unless a crime is perpetrated, we can't go and open a case on the individual. Yes, a man is standing in the corner preaching hate, but organizations such as CARE and also Anti-Defamation League collects this information, and especially the officer here, I forgot your name, Coleman. Officer Coleman said, you've got to report them. You've got to report them. And as Officer Coleman said again, he said, if there's smoke, there might be fire. So it's the responsibility of the community. And again, I keep saying this, it's a responsibility of the community. We can't know unless you tell us. By the time we know, it might be a little bit too late. So this is how the community becomes strong. The cooperation of the rest of us as one community to make sure that our quality of the community is good. So.
Do you guys remember, we called him ISIS dude. You remember the guy that walked around Houston with the ISIS flag? Everybody reported him. Everybody, the entire Sunni Muslim community reported him. And they were even concerned because he went to the Shia mosque and was really threatening them because they're the wrong kind of Muslim. The entire community of Houston stood up against that guy. So he didn't get very far trying to do that in this community, and he moved away. I think he went to Nevada or something. And there were some mental health issues there, but I think that showed a lot about us as a community when he showed up here.
All right, question? Dr. Abib?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for all our invited guests for being here today. Of course, you have been in your field for so many years, and you must have encountered so many cases during your career. I just want one of you, Mustafa, to share with us, for us to learn, to benefit from just one case, probably the most challenging case that you have handled. Just one, just for us to learn, how it happened and how you handle it. Thank you.
That's a heck of a question. I had so many, and usually my cases are in defense of Muslims. I get very few cases where we're having an ISIS guy, except, I was part of the group that was reporting, but most of the cases that I get have to do with Muslims. And I wanted to say something about some of the hate speech. It is protected. That's why Trump can get up and make his statement. That's why Ben Carson can make. That's why you can go out and say, I hate all people that wear purple hijabs or whatever. But that is protected speech. You don't have to like people, and you can say what you want in a free society. Now, when you say I'm going to get you, now that's a whole different issue. But here's the issue about how it affects us as Muslims, because as that barometer of hate goes up, it starts to impact every aspect of the society. So 45% of the cases that we get are work-related cases. They're people who have listened to this garbage, and now at work, Muslims are starting to catch it. And the one thing that, and just like they said, you need to report those things as soon as they happen. The day somebody calls you a name at work, the day they tell you you can't pray at work, the day they tell you have to take off your hijab, the day that they start making derogatory remarks at work, you need to report that immediately, either to HR first and then to us, EEOC, because what happens is a lot of Muslims wait until things get so bad that these people have built a case on you to get rid of you, and then they come to us. And when you come to us, you don't have any proof. It's one thing for people to be prejudiced, another thing to prove it. So I would suggest that you need to report it, because I have a lot of I have one horrendous case that I'm going to share with you. It's about a guy that worked for one of our major defense contractors. He's the lead engineer. They put him in a closet for his office. They called him sand niggers. They called him Osama. They called him everything but a child of God. On the job, his supervisor. And we took that case and we won that case. Thank God. We won that case, but he had kept the record. He had all of the information. He had documents. If you got people at your place of employment, they're not going to be a witness for you if something happens. So you have to keep record. All right, and the day that they start treating you bad, don't talk to them anymore about don't treat me bad. Write it. Send an email, because an email has the time, the place, everything's in that email. And copy yourself, because you won't be able to get it off of the company computer once you leave. If they terminate you, you have nothing. You have to send this to your own private email thing. But an email is a great tool, because we have so many cases like that. There's nothing more depressing for me than not to be able to defend or to advocate for someone because they haven't done it.
I believe every case is unique and every case is challenging. But not trying to sidestep this question is, when I came to the United States in '84, and just to be clear, I was not born in China, I was born in Taiwan. And so when I came here back in '84, yes, I can relate to some of the things that was said to me, and then the folks that picked on me in school. By the end of my high school tour, if I did not know Kung Fu, I did by then. That being said, we have come a long way since 9/11, guys. I mean, back in 9/11, when I was a new agent, still went behind the years trying to work a case. Someone said, oh, you know, this guy, he looks Pakistani, he was taking pictures. Oh my God. Look, right now it's 2016. Folks that calls in on the hotline, I got these guys acting weird, they're from Middle Eastern. Boom, not open. Every case is challenging, and every case is unique. But your FBI is much better equipped to deal with information today than back in 2001. So, thank you.
Well, the most challenging case I've worked still unsolved. It was a triple murder. There's a father and two kids. And I guess to this day, for me, I don't know, as a kid, he was under witness protection at the time. And I guess the mob found him, but his kids weren't supposed to be home at that time. But I guess according with the mob, you leave no evidence, nobody, no suspects or nothing behind. And that's been going on 20 years, still unsolved. So I don't know if it ever will be solved, but that is probably the most challenging case I have.
I got a little extra time to think as the microphone went around. So many of them went through my head. I'll just go with the simplest one. The young people in here won't even know what I'm talking about, but the older people will. When I was a young new agent, we had a baby stolen from the hospital, right out of the nursery. And the person who stole the baby dropped something on the ground. You kids, it was something called a beeper. And you don't know what a beeper is, but us older people do. It was even before there were pagers. A beeper just beeped, and it was a signal to you to call the office. Then after that, we got something called a pager. A phone number would appear in it, and you'd call that number. But anyway, this was the beeper era. That's how old I am. And by tracking the beeper, we tracked it to a guy who had gone to prison, who we talked to him, and he gave it to someone just the day before he left for prison, and then that guy gave it to, I mean, I was all over New England. I was all over Rhode Island and Massachusetts tracking this beeper. And eventually I found out that it was given to a guy who hasn't been out for a few days because his wife just had a baby. Oh, interesting. And funny thing is, she never really looked pregnant either. And we found the baby, and we were able to give it. The baby was gone for about 3 days, and we were able to return the baby to the mother. Fortunately, when newborn babies go missing, that's the one time they're usually well cared for. The psychology of a person that would steal a newborn baby wants a baby. When you have older children disappearing, it's not like that. So it's sad when your best case happens when you're a brand new agent, but that was a really good day.
Questions?
Yeah, the question is, when non-Muslims, when they commit a crime, especially the white folks, they try to evaluate them as a psych problem, that they have mental issues. So why is this so hard for same people to try to evaluate the Muslim too? Some of them have a lot of issues going on in their life, but that is never addressed. Every time it's just terrorism, the Muslim, terrorist, that's all, killing or jailing. But it's different from non-Muslim. Thank you.
That's absolutely true. That's your media network. We tried to do a story with a local news station here a couple of years ago. The reporter said, I want to talk to it was Steve Gentry. He was the chief of our terrorism about how the Muslim community works together with the FBI to keep everybody safe. So we said we'd do it. And I was there because I also oversee a lot of media things. I was witness to the entire interview. Steve did a fabulous interview. He was having monthly meetings with different Muslim community leaders. We had actually, Mr. Bombay-Wala from the Muslim community had pointed out some things happening at the airport with people coming back from the Hajj because the people that work at the airport didn't understand anything, so they trained them. We had all these wonderful initiatives going on, and Mr. Gentry talked about all of them to that reporter. But at the beginning of the interview, the reporter said, what are some of the threats we face? And the reporter said, well, of course, this was pre-ISIS. Well, we're worried about Al-Qaeda, and we're worried about them trying to... That's all the story was. When the story aired that night on the news, all it was Mr. Gentry talking about all the threats that exist that emanate from the Muslim community, and not one word about the bulk of the interview about how the Muslim community works with us every day to keep everybody safe. And that proved to me that the media reports what they want to report. We had an arrest in East Texas. A husband and wife had a storage locker. They were anti-U.S. government. They wanted to blow up federal courthouses in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas. They had 500,000 rounds of rifle ammo that would go through a bulletproof vest. They had 60 gallons of cyanide. This happened in Texas in 2004, and nobody even heard of it because it was two white people. And so I'm convinced that the media tells the story that they want to tell, and I know Andy can probably address a lot of the people that come to our attention who are saying they want to join ISIS. There's mental health issues going on, but nobody wants to hear about the mental health issue. Do you see that, Andy?
Yes, absolutely. You got to understand your news outlet, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they make money by sensationalizing information. If they report something that's put down, that's of no interest, they don't make that money. So,
this is one of my pet peeves, and this is why I gave a prelim to our discussion about our community, because what happens is we begin to believe the hype. That's the worst part. It's one thing for other people to say that you are no good and you Al-Qaeda and you Hezbollah and all this, But when we believe, that's the problem. And the other problem that I see, and this points to this ISIS recruitment thing, is that a lot of these youth are being bullied in school and everywhere else. Especially the young men, are not going to come to you and tell you about it. I've raised 4 boys, so I know. They keep secrets. They won't tell you because they don't want you coming up to the school making them look bad. All right, and that's what parents do. And even my wife now, my kids are all 30-something. She's still walking around like that. Kids, babies, she's still talking about he's not eating. Well, he's a grown man. You know, that's not our problem anymore. I'm trying to lead these kids, you know, and she keeps pulling me back. So the point is that, you know, all this rhetoric that we hear from the media, the rhetoric that we hear from the Islamophobes, and it's not just a social phenomenon. There's millions of dollars being poured into spreading propaganda and misinformation about Muslims. It's not just people didn't like Muslims and so they just start talking. No, there's a concerted effort by a cottage industry of Islam. I hate this word Islamophobia, but anti-Muslim sentiment that is going around. And we as parents have to stand strong. One of the things that I see that we don't do, we have to be strong in our household. Give you an example. My kids, every kid's been bullied. I was bullied in kindergarten. This guy pulled a switchblade on me in 2nd grade and proceeded to beat me up every day to the point that he would ask me if I was ready to get beat up. All right? Now, I'm just giving you a little history. And the only thing that stopped me from getting beat up is that I was going home and my uncle was coming out of the house and I was running home and he asked me why. And I said, this boy's trying to beat me up. And he said, well, if you run home tomorrow, you're going to fight me when you get here. So I changed it, right? I just went back and fought this kid, and after that I didn't have any problem. But the point is that as parents, my kids were bullied. This kid was threatening to come to our house and beat them up. And I said, nobody comes to our house and beats nobody up. If they come over here, it's going to be a sad day for everybody. And so, but it wasn't that I'm advocating violence, but the fact that I stood strong makes them feel comfortable in their skin. And as parents, we have to be comfortable ourselves. We have to say that we have to give the information, because if we don't give information out, they're going to get information from somewhere. If you don't tell them how they should behave, then they're going to get, I agree with my brother over here, he was talking about parents earlier. We have to, and this is because I know Muslims care about their families. I mean, you know, most of the Muslims I know, I mean, they have a care that goes beyond anything I understand. But we have to be strong in how we deal with our children. And the fact that ISIS can put stuff, people put stuff out when I was a kid. You know, if it wasn't for my parents, I'd been a hooligan. I lived in a gang neighborhood. I was in a gangland neighborhood. The kid across the street from me shot and killed a boy at 16. He didn't get out of prison until maybe 5 years ago. And I'm just 30, so you can understand. So I want to stress that we are the biggest influence for our children. They have to feel strong, and you have to give them that strength. They don't just get it from somewhere. You have to give them the information, and all that information that they put out on the internet needs to be answered by you. You need to stand strong and say, we're not going to tolerate this, that, and the other. And then they'll feel comfortable. Sorry.
All right, thank you. So before we continue, just wanted to let you know that we're going to still talk about police actions. We're going to talk about the open carry law. But before we go there, we also want to talk about the refugee situation. To talk about that, then a question from one of our young sisters, a video question from one of our young sisters.
We profess to stand as an example for all the world. Our unique experiment in freedom, tolerance, openness, and equality is our gift to societies and peoples everywhere. Come, join us. Enjoy a chance at the American dream. Today we mourn, but we cannot allow ourselves to become like those who want to destroy us. We cannot resort to the tactics of the barbarians. We must fight for what we believe in and who we are. Guard our freedoms faithfully for the generations to follow. And we must not let the rhetoric of potential and political extremists among us lead us to self-destruction. When there's panic, we show resolve. When there's calm for extremism, we resist. We are America. We must lead.
So when we have U.S. government saying, no Muslims allowed in, no Syrian Muslims allowed in, that absolutely ignites that in a way that's far more dangerous. I think ISIS could not have imagined that kind of incendiary repercussion from even these huge events. It's astonishing. Islamists that commit these attacks that happened in Paris define every single one of us, 1.7 billion, in the eyes of the onlookers. That's deadly. That's much more dangerous than Islamism itself.
They're all saying that they'll infiltrate. Why take that risk? Why gamble with American lives?
Because guess what? This is a country based on the idea that we are compassionate, that we will take
and
any
when they attack and people die, when they attack like in Paris and people die, who has blood on their hands?
You are inspiring
on their hands.
John Hannity, you are inspiring fear and discrimination against people. This is like Jeb Bush saying, oh yeah, take the Christians, not the Muslims. That's not America. So when you look at the vetting process, and it takes about 2 years, if not longer, for any of these refugees before they get to U.S. soil, you have to understand how thorough it can be and how we are, in fact, resorting to xenophobic anxiety instead of being a warm people.
And we are basically trying to bar the very people who are running away from the same terrorism that we're talking about. These Syrian refugees have left their country because of ISIS. That the largest group of victims of ISIS are Muslims. Muslims are the largest group of victims in ISIS. They've seen trauma, they've seen torture, they have seen things unfathomable that we as Americans will probably never experience. And here we are telling them, nope, can't come to our country, can't see some normalcy in your life, we can't see safety. This is not the American way, that's not what we're known for.
Because this evil organisation has it in their heads that if they can make Muslims the enemy of the West, then Muslims in France and England and America and here in Australia will have nowhere to turn but to ISIL. That was exactly their strategy in Iraq. And now they want it to go global. So if you're a member of parliament, or a has-been member of parliament, preaching hate at a time when what we actually need is more love, you're helping ISIL. They have told us that. If you're a Muslim leader telling your community they have no place here, or a non-Muslim basically saying the same thing, you're helping ISIL. They have told us that. Or if you're just someone with a Facebook or Twitter account firing off misguided missives of hate, you're helping ISIL. They have told us that. And I'm pretty sure that right now, none of us wants to help these bastards.
All right, thank you. So we would like the next set of questions to come around this topic, what we've just seen. But before that, like I said, I'm going to play a short clip, 31 seconds long clip about a young sister that has a question for us.
My name is Ethan. I'm a second grader. My question is, can we move to Nigeria if Donald Trump becomes president? Because I'm afraid he might put us in ISIS, make us wear badges and put us in some other places which are still belonging in America.
Thank you. So, we'll give whoever wants to go ahead.
No, I don't think you have to move to Nigeria. That fits we're all moving. I hope and pray Trump do not become president, first of all. I think that's bad for all of us. But no, I don't think you have to wear a badge or anything around your neck. We're all Americans. We're all here in America. We all should be treated the same. Trump is just delusional.
Well, we are a non-political organization. I get mad on the news yesterday on Lou Dobbs. They had call in if you think that the FBI is trying to look for a reason not to charge Hillary Clinton. The FBI doesn't charge anybody. We investigate. We hand over our investigation to the prosecutors. That's not us. We don't decide. So again, getting people to believe things that aren't true. So whoever the president is, we have to work for them. And Andy's probably not going to be allowed to say anything because he's not close to retirement, and I am. He would say that it doesn't matter to him who wins, but I'm doing everything I can, to make sure that doesn't happen with Trump becoming president. But look, what's the biggest reaction we've gotten in this room? We've talked about killing 2-year-olds. We've talked about, and the biggest reaction we got was when we said his name. He knows how to take up all the oxygen in the room. It's really something to watch. But but the FBI, the FBI director serves for 10 years. The president cannot ask the FBI director to leave. Bill Clinton hated Louis III, and I don't think that Comey and Obama get along super well. They're not supposed to. We're supposed to operate separately. The Attorney General is part of the President's cabinet. They serve at the invitation of the President, and they will leave when the President leaves. But we are not a political organization, and we really try to exist in a different world than that. Yeah.
Real quick, we joke about Trump, but let's understand this. We have to get out the vote. That's what we like. Because if we don't get out and vote, there is a chance. So you have to get out and vote. Young, old, get out and vote. And make it known.
Well, I've always wanted to go to Nigeria. So if you all don't get out and vote and allow Trump to be president, that will be my excuse.
I just want to recap on some of the videos. One, a beautiful little girl in her question. I don't know if you can catch it, the videos about generalization, us versus them, in the end is, I know how it feels to get generalized, them, Asians, right? Every time there's something going on with China, my colleague's like, dude, what's wrong with you guys, man? I'm like, really? Us versus them, right? But what really isn't asked is, it's not about us or them, it's about you. I am you, you are me. So once we understand and bridge that communication, understand our identity, we don't generalize. And so if someone does something to us, bump into me in HDB while I'm trying to go for the sirloin, and they took it, and I'm like, oh my God, that guy, and I generalize. Don't generalize. It's not us versus them, it's you and me.
Thank you. So we'll still take questions on around the issue of terrorism and refugee and stuff like that. Yes, madam.
Yeah, so my question is around what happened a few days ago. My sister-in-law had an exam. She drove an hour for the exam, wanted to get there, and the lady there said she had to take off her hijab. And she was like, well, she showed her identity card, driver's license, passport, and she had her hijab on, and the lady said no, she wasn't going to write except she takes off her hijab. And as she was trying to explain next, the lady started acting all panicky and said that she feels uncomfortable with her around, so she won't write the exam, she wants her to leave. So at the end of the day, security was called, and security took her out and asked her what the problem is, and she explained everything to security, and security was like, the lady is delusional, that she should call the headquarters and they would need to address the issue. And she called them and they told her that they were going to investigate the issue, but she couldn't write the exam. At the end of the day, she did not write that exam. Now, the reason why I'm saying this here is because we were a bit puzzled, and we were trying to find a reporting channel to be able to report this issue. And there wasn't a way we could get that, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to make that known today. We need to find a way to report such issues when people are discriminated against. So that's why, that's my question. Thank you.
Those are the types of cases that should come to us. We would have been on that like right away. There's no excuse for that. That was her right to wear the hijab. They would have never asked a nun to take off her habit. And that's how we should have handled it. But if you want to see me after, I'll give you a card. And then anytime you have that, because we take those very seriously, and those are really legal. I mean, this is constitutional rights. This is not just, you know, something that's made up. You have a right to practice your faith. You have a right to wear your Islamic attire, etc. So I'll give you a card now.
Good morning. Yeah, my first question is, I want members of the Parliament to define what terrorism is in the context of what we're discussing now, so that from that then I will be able to put up my follow-up question.
Alright, before you answer that question, there's also another question I'd like to join to that. Please let's pay attention. So the question is a bit lengthy, but you get this at the end of the day. Just as African Americans are concerned about running around in their neighborhood out of the fear of being profiled, many Muslims are concerned about participating in activities such as paintballing, target practicing, and range shootings out of the fear of being profiled and placed on the watch list. What range of activities and/or procurement qualifies as providing material support to terrorists, especially against the backdrop of Omar Faraj Sahid al-Haddan being charged recently?
I can answer that first part of the question, but I cannot answer the second part of that question because it's an ongoing investigation and the case is still in litigation. All right. Terrorism is any action, all right, whether it's coercion, whether it's any sort of tactics that would change how you behave. If it changed the way you dress, the way you go to school, the way you curb your own freedom, that is terrorism. So if you're looking for more of a contextual answer from the dictionary, it would be pretty much the same, but much flowery than I can provide that to you right now.
We used to teach police officers in small towns about terrorism. We told them to us, terrorism is when someone is trying to effect a change, whether it's a political change or a religious change or a cultural change, through violence or threats of violence, rather than trying to effect change through electing people to Congress who feel the same way you do, or having that beautiful woman speaking out on the streets of Cambridge, where I used to live. It made me sad seeing it. Anyway, when you feel that you're going to affect change through violence, or shooting up a place, or that's terrorism. And what constitutes material support in general? Can you touch on that? Yeah.
Material support is anything that you give to a terrorist organization in support of, including material, money, and yourself, your own labor. That's also material support.
But the question, the reason why that question comes up is this. So we Muslims are very generous by nature. By our teachings, we are very generous. So if somebody comes into the masjid, and it used to happen prior to 9/11. Somebody comes in the masjid and says he has problem, or maybe there's a school they're trying to build in Nigeria or in India or anywhere. You know, these are causes we recognize, we identify with, and they raise money. We give them money with our credit cards. Could that be considered as
I have met with people at many masjids, most recently at the one in Beaumont. I said, you all do have to be very careful. During Ramadan is when you are very generous and you are supporting, and the imam himself said people come in that make me nervous. I think they're either crooks, you know, maybe they're not terrorists, but they're crooks, and they come in, and we set them up with like Charity Navigator and Morningstar and a couple of other really great computer programs where you can check, because yes, if you give a big lump sum of money to someone who ends up taking it to buy, you know, ammunition for ISIS, you've got a problem. So there are wonderful Charity Navigator websites out there, and you shouldn't believe anyone who comes in off the street, because again, maybe they're just a fraud artist or a scam artist, but maybe it's worse. So, you know, you work hard for your money, really, really do need to be very, very careful about who you give it to.
Thank you. So, yes, now my follow-up question. After having clarified what terrorism is, I know that this country is the greatest country in the world. And we cannot underestimate the power of the media in disseminating information. They can make and unmake. But the job that the FBI, all the security agencies are doing to protect us, to make us safe, because nobody wants to get blown up. Sometimes we feel that the efforts that is being made by you guys is being watered down by the media through propagation of information that is counterproductive. Why I say that is this. You see, having recognized what terrorism is all what is all about. You see somebody, an American, you go into the mall, you start shooting people, or you go into the convenience store, you start shooting people, or because of parking lot, you go kill, something, or you go walk into a church and you spray everybody there, and at the end of the day, what you call it is mentally something. Somebody is on the campaign, something, congresswoman, I wouldn't forget, because they made her life miserable. Yet we still call that, we call it something that's other than terrorism. Why is it that we cannot call a spade a spade? If you check it from the television you guys are giving, I see no difference between what the ISIS guys are doing, because they kill a lot of, the majority of their victims are Muslims. Yeah. So why is it that, what effort are you guys making to get the media to see the way you see things? Thank you, Baba.
Because I work with the media as part of my job, I can't tell the media how to report a story. What I can do, and I do very often, is when I know I have a really nice story, I'll try to sell it to a reporter that I think would do it, and try to do stories that are more positive. But you know what I mean by the spin? That they can spin the story in whatever direction they want. And people have asked me before, why can't you make the media stop doing this or that? I cannot. Fortunately, if we all stopped watching the media that didn't cover things well, they would change. But people love to watch mayhem and destruction and hate, and their ratings go up. But if somebody could organize us all to stop watching media outlets that are unfair, and they had a financial impact, they would stop. But until that happens, they're not going to stop.
The brother hit on a really important point, but another thing besides not watching it is we need our own media. And it's time that, for many years, our community focused on either getting their kids into medical school or engineering or attorneys. but we need to focus on having more media professionals. We need to have our own media to put out our information. I don't know how many media interviews, especially the last part of the year. And I must have talked to those persons at least 45 minutes to an hour. But when they put it on the screen, it's like 10 seconds or 30 seconds, and they're telling you what I said. They're not showing me telling them what happened. But it's important, and we do meet with the media. We had our first media luncheon last year where we brought in a bunch of media professionals, and we talked about terminology that they use, like Islamists. I've never heard of that until recent years. What is that? Islamist? I guess that's like a fascist or a communist, but I never heard of this language. And then when we use it, it gives credibility. That's one of the reasons I don't like Islamophobia. jihadist. I never heard of a jihadist. What is a jihadist? I never heard that there was such a thing. Or even you hear people say stuff like political Islam. Well, my understanding Islam encompasses everything we do. So how we act in politics, at home, at work, in the government, all of that should be influenced by our religion. Which means, and I gotta be clear because somebody say they're trying to bring Sharia. But it does mean that it governs our behavior in a good way. It doesn't mean that we're trying to make everybody else govern it, but we govern our own behavior. So we need our own media. We have to have it. This is not something we should do. This is something we have to do. If you want to get good media, then you better be part of it. Just like good government, you better be part of it.
All right, so we'll give the mic to brother. Shall I give the mic to him?
Assalamu alaikum. My question piggybacks on the question over here. In terms of labeling any activity, you make a contribution to a group that you don't have any idea what connections or what they're doing with their funds. A lot of times, like Sister said here, people come to Ramadan and make an announcement, we're raising money for this or that, everyone gives. And now, so I'm piggybacking on that and asking this question. And once you label it contributing to a terrorist organization, material support, then the prosecution in these cases is handled very differently. When you put that label on someone, then they can take you and isolate you somewhere where you don't see anybody, you don't have any attorney, any defense. You're in limbo until they decide to, somehow or another open up the gates and let you have an attorney or let you have some kind of representation.
Well, you'll get an attorney. You'll always get an attorney. You'll get an attorney at your initial appearance.
Well, that's if you get a trial. Sometimes they take you and drop it somewhere.
We got to somehow, find the actuality of things. Material support to terrorism is Title 18.339. That means the individual who provides material support has to, the caveat is knowingly. Knowingly. So, attorney, if any assistant United States attorney hounds you, an FBI hounds you all day, if you don't have the knowingly aspect of it, they got a case against you. Okay, just like if I give somebody on the street $5 and then he goes and joins ISIS, I didn't support ISIS, nor did you support ISIS. This is with the thing of the law that we're not out here to just get people. Okay, if we get someone for Title 18.239, we have concrete evidence to suggest and to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in court that this person intentionally provided material support to a designated terrorist organization. So rest assured.
Right. So the person that's going to respond is a lawyer, so by profession is from.
It's a follow-up to what the gentleman asked. The materiality issue sometimes is very blunt. Somebody is being arrested first. What it creates for the family is panic. What it creates for the family is disorientation. To what extent does the government work before they would just even invite the person for discussion? It's something that needs to be balanced in some ways to look at how is it affecting the position of that person in the community and the position of that person within his family. And that is something that is really important, especially when it is an Muslim-related issue. Because the person cannot really gain himself back, even where he's been let go 2 days later. The mark will be on him. And I just want to share that with you, so it will be something that needs to be really looked into before even this person gets invited. If you want to respond, it's okay.
I think you might, in Great Britain, you can take someone in for questioning and hold them for several days without charging them with anything. You can't do that here. If someone has been taken into custody by the FBI, the case has already been made. And I'll let Andy go, but I think in England and Ireland, you could take someone off the street and hold them for, I think in some cases, up to a week, just to question them without charges. And of course, if they're innocent, then they walk back out and they're tainted. But it works differently here.
I would agree with Patricia. If the FBI comes out to arrest you and serve an arrest warrant, the case has been made, the proper cause has been achieved. And then, right, and then we have already gone to the judge with the sufficient evidence for prosecution.
So, talking about making the case, I know Sister Tara, you have a question? Go ahead and ask the question. Maybe I have another follow-up question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for coming out here to share the wealth of your knowledge with us. My question is, and I'm not sure if you're in a position to answer it, but the incident that happened recently with the fire at the small mosque where one of the congregants was arrested, I'm just wondering how we can be confident that the person that was arrested is actually the perpetrator of a crime as opposed to a person of convenience.
Well, as far as I know, they did a thorough investigation on it. I don't think they just picked him randomly. I would like to think that the police did their job and they're very confident from the evidence that they received, and that's why he was arrested.
So,
since I was really involved in that, the case that the brother was arrested primarily was because there was a video showing he was the last one leaving the mosque. They also went to his house and they found an accelerant or a charcoal lighter or what have you that had the same serial number. I'm not sure, but it's kind of hard because we always, if you've had some really bad experiences or you know of them, and I grew up with plenty of that, where police were dropping guns at people and claiming that they were doing different things, then it's kind of hard for you to get the trust back. And what happens is you hear so much stuff, and we're a witness to so much that sometimes it makes us difficult. But I haven't heard what the progress on that case is, but that was it. Now, the hardest part that made it hard for me to believe is that this brother had went to the mosque for 5 years. His kids were being taught by the sheikh. His wife, and they were devout followers. They never had a bad. In fact, nobody that I spoke with had a bad word to say about this guy. None. There was nobody that said it. But nevertheless, as we said, we are a community. And in our community, we possibly got people who are not wrapped too tight. It could have been anything else, so we just have to, we really do. Not, I don't want to say crazy, but it's not wrapped too tight. They kind of loose. All right, but we have to, at some point, try to, trust that what's happening is going to turn out for the best.
Can I add on that? If you watched the news last night, a man he just pled guilty to setting the fire at the mosque in Clear Lake. He was homeless and tried to use that as an excuse, but we had many witnesses who said no, he was homeless or not, he was a hater. He did not like Muslims, and he intentionally set a fire at the Clear Lake Mosque. Thank goodness it didn't do a lot of damage, but he pled guilty yesterday, and he's going away for like 7-8 years. So.
Before we go to the next set of questions, I know we have questions. That's why we set out before this meeting we set up the information notices that you have questions sent in. One of the questions we have is this, relating to this. In the wake of the revelations by Edward Snowden, many Americans felt their civil liberties have been violated. However, the average American Muslim had gotten used to the idea of the state violating his civil liberties. When you consider that some of our brothers have been given extra scrutiny when traveling or that they have stories of informants within the masjid. Firstly, is there any credence to that assertion, the assertion that there are informants within the masjid? Number two, secondly, what activities can lead to someone being given extra scrutiny, and what can one do to clear oneself?
Informant. So, for example, if you see something wrong, you come to the FBI building, you talk to me, does that make you an informant? I find that slightly disturbing. I find you guys to be community leaders and participants of this community. I feel like the word informant has been stigmatized in a very negative setting. Is Mustafa an informant? Is Officer Coleman an informant? Right? These are the people that is having dialogue with the community, me, part of your community. So I hope that answers your first part.
And also, I know that there was a program that the NYPD was doing, and they were even going out of their own jurisdiction into New Jersey and putting undercover folks into the mosques. I mean, they admitted that they did it, and I think that some of that people think it's us. That they think that that was us. That was the NYPD, and they admitted that not only were they doing it in the 5 boroughs, but they were actually going into New Jersey. And Governor Christie, I think, threw them out and said, no, you're not coming into my state. But if we can help clarify, that was not us. That was a police department that's under new leadership. And maybe you want to address them.
No, we don't do that. That's crazy. You know, it's disrespectful, first of all. If that's the case, you need to put somebody in the KKK and all these other organizations. But no, we don't do that. It's sad. When the police department starts doing that, you need to look at the leader.
So, Brother Abdullah, question. Do you have any question from the hand? No? Okay. We're going to go on of your question. Maybe another person. But basically, go ahead and ask your question.
Mine is more of an advice or relationship with law enforcement about what you guys are doing to hire, whether it's FBI or the local police enforcement, to hire Muslims that can come in, work with you hand in hand, to sift through some of these perspectives that it is very, very foreign, no matter how long you've been involved in enforcement, as far as Islamic issues and understanding, in helping you investigating some of these cases without misconstruing something else for the other that is really not happening. The reason why I'm encouraging you to do that, and I encourage my brothers as well, law enforcement is a noble profession. It's good if you decide when you finish your first degree, if you don't want to go to law school, go to apply with FBI. It's okay. As an American, you will be able to contribute to your community because you will help the investigators to be able to see things from a totally different light. Think that, wow, we didn't think it happened. When I see Brother Mustafa Karo sitting up there, it helps me greatly. And may God Almighty continue to be with him. The extraordinary work that he does, and the wealth of experience and insight that he brings in to help the Muslim community as a person that comes from the struggle.
Thank you, sir.
Came from the struggle from the black struggle, for example, in this country. Some of us were here during the time when even the local police system was very, very brutal to African Americans. It's not only African American if you are black. So, him being a part of our community, he has some wealth of experience that he can use to be able to help some of these cases. So if you hire some of us, or some of our people, to work with you hand in hand. They will share not only the law and all this other stuff that you use to investigate these cases. They will share their insight about, no, you guys are looking at it wrongly. This is what is happening. God continue to be with you guys.
Thank you. Before you answer that question, we would like to use this opportunity to recognize members of our community who are in law enforcement. I see Brother Ibrahim here. Who else is in law enforcement? Brother Ibrahim is law enforcement. Are you in law enforcement? Please get up for recognition too. Inshallah. So, he's not here, that's what.
You're exactly right, and we are doing everything that we can. Back in the 1950s, you know, the FBI was spying on Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, and the FBI was the other to the African American community. Come to our office now. Go to the big boss. But I don't think that the African American community believes any longer that there are not people inside the FBI who grew up like me, who went to church like I did on Sunday, who understand my life experience. And the same thing has to be true for the Muslim community. You have to integrate into those structures of our society and know that there are people sitting inside the FBI building who grew up like I do, you know, who have the same experience I do. And in my 7 years working with so many community leaders, I can't tell you who they are because the final decision is going to be theirs, but I've convinced 3 people that I think are just phenomenal to at least begin the process, and the final decision will be theirs. But if Brother Shakir has my email, if you would like to have our recruiters come out and speak to your college students, we would welcome that. You'd be doing us a favor. And we could also send out someone to talk about some of the people who don't want to be FBI agents but might want to be an interpreter or a translator for us. Those jobs, you know, you don't carry a gun, you don't have to do anything dangerous, and you can work as a translator until you're 70, 80. We have people in their 80s working at our office. So we would love to come down and talk to your community about job possibilities.
I know that there's a sister that wants to ask a question over there. I want a different perspective. Alright, so let's do this. Because we're also watching the time.
As a young, yeah, it was English.
Okay, let's get the young boy. We don't want somebody asking a question twice, please. Because there are so many hands.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have 2 questions. The first one is, because of the FBI, do you have the police or you have a different job to do? And the second question is, what's the full meaning of FBI?
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's one thing that if you have a youth group, we sometimes go out and talk to youth groups about understanding how many levels of law enforcement we have. There's a mall security guard, and then there's the school police, and there's the constables, and there's the sheriffs, and there are so many levels of law enforcement that it's very complicated. And the short answer is that we investigate things that are not just local. If one neighbor shoots another neighbor on the same street in the same town, the Houston Police Department can come out and handle it. But what if the person hires a hitman to come in from another state and then he leaves? And we investigate things that require us to have offices in more than one place. We investigate only certain things. We investigate civil rights. We investigate certain violent crimes, terrorism, espionage, human trafficking, white-collar crime, and other things. And I could talk to you for an hour about what we do, but I'll tell you it's very cool and you would love it, and you should become an FBI agent.
Alright, so I know there are several questions. Alright, so we have to be very mindful of time. Sister Afsar.
Well, we want to hear you.
So our ISIS, including our kids and everything. But one thing is, I'm so scared of going online because once you go in, it says, you know, the cookie pops up and it starts right there.
No, don't go to ISIS's website. Go to the BBC and then look at the story from BBC.
These are how people got mistaken for something else. Then so you're searching for something, and at times you won't be there to write it.
Just to add to what she said, in coming up with this discussion, I actually did some research too. And each time I go to Google and I type terrorism or something like that, at the back of my mind I'm saying, am I doing the right thing? Am I not going to? I mean, you know, these things, they keep track of these things. And also, just to add a question, you said, remember at the beginning you said, you know, you can't probably not know where ISIS is coming from. As an IT professional, I know about IP. So I know IP is just like an address. You can be able to isolate, this is coming from this area. So why have we not been able to say, okay, this is a specific area, ISIS is coming from, blocking them? Just answer that.
Because it goes both ways. We block it, we don't see it. And we want to continue to have our eyes on the prize, see who are they influencing what they're doing. It's a two-way street here. And then, I'm not here to preach or anything, and I understand that you're a concerning mother that was probably asking this question. I have two boys, one's 10, one's 5, 10 years old, is probably getting online, boring me to death. I'm scared every day. I'm more worried about what he goes online and sees than what the ISIS is doing right now. Because you must monitor your kids. You must know what your kids are doing online. Who are they talking to? Alright, especially chat rooms. If they're speaking codes, and then make sure that you have their password to their email account. I mean, as a parent, myself, please do that. You must know what your kids are doing on the computer. Because the computer right now, in my opinion, is more scary than the worst parts of town. Oh yes. So each case that we open, we call it predication. How is this case open? And we must meet certain thresholds. And just because you are educating yourself on going online, watching the little ISIS videos, that's not enough to predicate. That's your freedom.
Thank you. So we know there are so many questions. Well, like I said, we have to be mindful of time because we still have about 2 other topics to cover. And we know we want to really engage Captain Michael Coleman. So we'll go to the police issues. So before we go there, we'll play some short clip.
A quick comment. The boy that just asked questions said something about FBI. What's the full meaning of FBI?
That stands, Federal Bureau of Investigation. So the word federal lets you know that it's all 50 states, it's not local. And then Bureau, which is the of investigation. We don't prosecute, we don't charge people, we don't go to court and argue, we investigate. And then we turn over whatever we found, and then the lawyers, it always ends up with the lawyers, doesn't it? They decide, you know, where it goes from there. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So let's play some clips again. So that's straight what we're about to talk about. Alright, so the question is this. Assalamu alaikum. The question is this. Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, and many more are the names that we've come to associate with as victims of police actions. Considering that this community is minority of minorities, that is, we are predominantly sub-Saharan African American Muslims. What do you understand of our fears and our concerns for ourselves and our children, especially our boys? Also, in what ways can the police and the FBI help us overcome these concerns?
You know, I have a 17-year-old son, so I have the same concern, especially about being black, about him being black. You know, one thing we have to do is educate some of our young men and women on how to interact with police officers. Because out there in the street, you're not going to win that battle. You're not going to win that battle alone. Don't say nothing. Let your parents fight the battle. Let the lawyers fight the battle for you. Out there in the street, I can guarantee you, you're not going to win that battle. Your main thing is coming home the next day to fight. That's a double-edged sword, because we need to educate these officers how to treat our people. I understand that. We have bad officers, and that's just something we can't do. But the more you complain on these bad officers, like I said, the more you get them out of law enforcement. Because an officer like that does not belong in law enforcement. That was a child. If that was my child, I would be very upset. So with that said, law enforcement have bad people like teachers have bad teachers. But you have to complain on them. You have to get that type of law enforcement officer off the street, out of law enforcement altogether. Because there's no excuse whatsoever for anybody to act like that, or for you to be disrespectful. But you're not going to win that battle on the street.
And just those of you know, one of the things that the FBI investigates under our civil rights program is police brutality. If there's a shooting or an act of brutality that happens, we call it, the lawyers say it's called under color of law. If they do it because they have the badge and the power, it's going to get an FBI investigation. And you'll hear that all the time. When one of these happens, they'll always say, has the FBI been called in or not? The hard part though, and again, I can't address it because we do the investigation, then we hand it over to the prosecutors. These are very hard cases to make. A lot of times, the punishment doesn't really seem to fit the crime. And I'll just be honest about it. We do we find out what happened, we turn over all of our statements, and then the lawyers decide whether or not the information is enough to prove that they committed a federal civil rights violation. And when it is, they'll get some stiff sentences. But a lot of times, they'll say that it doesn't meet the statute. I'll be perfectly honest. We've been very disappointed as an organization when we've turned over our findings, and then in whatever city it is, the prosecutors look at it and say, we don't think we have enough. That's what happens sometimes. When it's really clear cut, you're going to like what you see. But when it's, when there's video missing and when there's information missing, a lot of times it leaves people thinking that more should have been done, and I'll be perfectly honest about that.
You still have the question? You still have the question?
Questions around what the other lady said earlier about online investigation. Where do you actually draw the line between researching and what the FBI might term providing material support or researching to inflict harm or something like that?